Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another audio edition of Remember to Breathe. This week's going to be a little bit different. I feel like things are flowing and changing for me, especially in terms of the decentralized consciousness and wherever I find myself defined within it. So I wanted to kind of give an update as far as what I'm envisioning my role to be, how things may change, what things might look like. I don't know, it's interesting. Maybe it's this identity that's driving me to want to explain to you all what's happening, but ultimately I know that it really doesn't matter. So yeah, I'll kind of do that, and let's start by doing a little meditation with one another. We'll pretend that we're all just sitting around a big fire together, meditating and communicating node to node. So if now is not a great time for you to be present, if you're having a hard time getting centered within your body, within the space, maybe pause it and come back to it. Yeah, so let's start by a few deep breaths. Feel the infinitely complex mixture of air molecules filling your lungs. And your body removing those things which it does not need, and synthesizing those oxygen atoms. Which it does need to thrive. Them seeping into the walls of your lungs. Coursing through your veins. Tune into all of these electromagnetic signals of the world, the physical signals that your body interprets. From your taste, your smell, your sight. Whatever your body is being triggered by in the external reality in any given moment, because it's constantly changing. You could probably hear the birds chirping. These are all quite literally electric signals that our body is interpreting. You are not the signals. Your body is not the signals. You're getting an abstract layer of reality itself. It reminds me of Jack Mahler's BTC Prague keynote that was just shared with me. I'm going to share that in the newsletter this week as well. Speaking about abstraction. Whew. Then finally tune into that emotional layer of reality. The layer of reality which I'm not a professional scientist by any means, but as far as I understand it, we can interpret the electrical signals in our brain from touch and smell and taste, but the emotional signals which come in are much more complex. I'm sure you can interpret to them, but they're much, much deeper. And so to me they're more complicated than the signals of the five senses. To me, because they are, there's a different level of abstraction, whether or not they truly are further abstracted from reality than the senses, or closer, I don't know, but I feel like they're closer to, from my exploration of what emotions actually are. I think that emotions are everything. We're constantly in our emotions. So let's feel into those right now. So I had a session this morning, and in that session, it started to feel like to me that some of these etheric abilities, which I've been asking people about on the podcast, have begun to open up for me. During the meditation, I almost noticed a different depth of my surroundings. I had my eyes closed, but the room around me felt like it was completely different. It felt like I was in this open space, and that's really all that I can say to put words to it. But when I say emotion, the emotion of everything, this is what I'm describing. So, we're not trying to label or define happiness or sadness or fear. Those can be helpful. But once we can almost spread them more thinly, like butter, understand what these emotions are at their thinnest layer, we can begin to feel them in ways that our words can't necessarily describe. So I think emotions are actually somewhat of a triggering word, in that the word emotions tends to force you to think of the idea of feeling happy or sad or mad or content, joyous, fulfilled. But we are, as human beings, a gigantic emotional antenna, feeling the emotion of the entire universe. When we learn to walk, when we learn to open a door, we interpret these things largely with our five senses, but then after a while, they become committed to what we describe as muscle memory. I think muscle memory is effectively just allowing those five senses to be a trigger for the emotion of feeling overall what it feels like to balance your body, what it feels like to use those tiny little balancing muscles in every step, to feel the door handle, because we're not thinking about it anymore at that point. We're not noticing so much of all those details. We're just feeling the emotion of the world around us. So emotion in this way sort of takes on a new definition. Yeah. So let's sit together, feeling all of the emotions of the world around us. Maybe you are feeling the classical emotions right now. Maybe you're able to feel deeper through them and spread them more thin to feel something deeper. Keep that breath going. All right. Well, I'm going to continue my best to flow in a node-to-node conversation with you all. Although some of it is more rational. So the past few months, since deciding to be disciplined, more forceful about putting out a newsletter and a podcast on a weekly basis, it's been really quite transformative for me. It's been really awesome. And it feels very inspiring as well for all of you, because it seems to me like my desire to connect with my node more deeply and embody my authentic self in this physical reality has provided value for all of you as well. And that's like the most fulfilling feeling. It really is. Over the past couple weeks, it's begun to feel a little bit more like the newsletter and the podcast have become more of a chore for me. They become things that in a way, like, I feel if I did not continue, I would be letting you all down, letting myself down. But as you can all feel, none of that's true. So going forward, the content creation that you might expect from me, it probably won't be at the regular cadence that you're used to seeing it at. There might be weeks or even months, who knows, years, I don't know. Just don't know when I'll feel it again, but it's probably going to be a lot more sporadic as far as when podcasts and newsletters get released. I'm also going to do my best to figure out some kind of system of automation for the newsletter, so when new things get posted, either by anyone who is playing around in these higher levels of consciousness, of unconditional love, and wants to share, whenever these things get shared on the website, I'd like them to automatically get sent out through email and social media at regular cadences, just because it's about spreading the word. I think that there is, and the more that I feel into this, the more confident that I feel that we don't really need to share it so much. Yes, the sharing is helpful because it can sort of be a reminder to breathe. It can be a reminder to center. But if we're looking at this from the lens of pure unconditional love, no fear at all, we can be safe in assuming, or sure in knowing, that this content will reach the right people when it needs to be heard. But when we force it through, it might tend to get distorted. It might tend to attract the wrong, I want to say wrong people, but wrong people isn't really the right word, but people who are aligned with some element of this force instead of the element of just trust and unconditional love and knowing that inherent value and its ability to make its way across the world, just like Bitcoin, you know. So I think where I want to wrap this up now, and I wish I could pin this meditation conversation at the top of the RSS feed, because I feel like it would be a good one to revisit, because I think it kind of marks a new phase, at least for me. So defining the decentralized consciousness. We know that if we're going to define something, someone or a group of someones has to hold that definition. And when something approaches that definition, which is outside of it, there are two things that can happen. That definition can then sort of change and allow it to become a part, because if that outside thing doesn't fit within the bounds of what is defined to be the organization, then the organization itself has to change. It has to change its definition, change what it is. Or the definition remains the same and says, no, we don't allow that here. Now, in the second scenario, well, in either scenario, really, the people who decide to hold that definition have to take some action. maybe they don't have to take an action as much as something will change. They will either allow this definition to morph and change and to fit the new thing, or they themselves will leave. But if we are to have a space where we are to come together, to hold one another accountable, I think that's sort of like an old paradigm, holding one another accountable. But to be a support system for one another, I think it's like a light accountability partner. How's that? So it's a place where you come back and you say, and it's like an anchor point for what? This is the definition of decentralized consciousness. So this is how I define it. And it's so difficult because decentralized would effectively mean that there is no one leader. There is no one person defining it. So you need to, as the listener, take my definition of what all of this is with a grain of salt and understand that you may define it differently. But I think that the ultimate drive of the people in this group is to connect and embody their authentic self. Now, if I define the authentic self, it does go into some models of how I believe the universe is constructed. I believe that I am a fractal of the universe. I believe I am a perfect piece of all that there is. I believe that I am not my body, but I am one with the spirit, with the universe, and all of this that I believe of myself, I believe of all of you. And I believe that we have been given the gift of free will to determine whether or not we want to experience this reality as separate from the divine oneness of ourselves, to be disconnected from that oneness and each other, or to grow closer to it. And I believe that this thing, this organization, is a place for people to do that. So that means that sometimes we approach things that are difficult. It means that sometimes we approach one another with our own triggers and projections. But if we can keep this underlying thread in mind and understand that this is all just a drama that we're playing out, we can be reminded that as long as we can get in touch with that initial intention and get in touch with our authenticity, activate our node, embody our node. What does the node want? Then everything's going to be okay. And that answer might be will be different for everybody, I think. We're all living unique, very unique experiences here. You can almost look at it as though each of us is building our own version of the universe around us. We don't even know that we're interpreting colors the same. So, given what my definition of the decentralized consciousness is, you may or may not feel inclined to approach me to offer perspective, challenge my perspective, or maybe you just don't feel aligned with it. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you. I think that ultimately each of us is decentralized consciousness. It's not like there's this one specific group. I think that we're really aiming to achieve something much greater than an organization. It's just we're a group of people who just so happen to have a common interest, and we allow one another to push the boundaries of that common interest, push the boundaries of our own identities. So let this be based on my definition of the decentralized consciousness and now the evolution of where this project for me is going. Let this be an invitation to all of you to create when you feel inspired to create, to share those divine inspirations, curiosities, and creations with the decentralized consciousness. Whenever you feel called, whenever you feel excited to connect and share with other people. On a practical level, this looks like sharing in the community Telegram group or reaching out to me. And we can, be sure that your stuff gets shared out through various forms of media if you feel called to do that. But there's also the darkness that we share too. So whenever you feel that darkness and you need help, it's another opportunity to reach out in the community group and say, hey, I'm struggling with this right now, and I'm willing to surrender to new perspectives, and I'm willing to surrender to the vulnerability of sharing my imperfections. Yeah. It's a place to share both the light and the dark with as much underlying neutrality as we can hold for one another. Because we all know, every single one of us knows that there is no such thing as a perfect human being. Because we can't even define it to begin with. Yep, I think we're coming to the end of this now. This has been really fun. I feel very inspired right now, just sharing this timeless present moment with all of you, actually. Who knows, maybe this will be the inspiration to keep going for a while. I don't know. Yeah. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. Thank you for your node-to-node connections. please don't hesitate to continue to be in touch with me. Nothing's really changing on that front. Let's see where this the next form of this journey, how it begins, how it takes shape. Talk to you soon.